Well, good evening, everybody. My name is Bill Wald. I am the CSI Executive Director. Um, and it is my honor to be the guest host this evening because our distinguished president, Tommy Nelms, has a family obligation. So he asked me to fill in, and I said, you know what, Tommy, I'd be happy to do it. So just a few reminders that, these presentations are for the consumer, and we want you to get as much out of it as possible. Tonight's subject matter is going to be how the weather affects your fireplace. But I do want to give you my little three reminders before we start. And those are, as we know, everybody has little ones around their house, be it if you're grandparents or new grandparents, like some people, or mom and dad's nephews, nieces, whatever. Remember, keep those things away from the children. If you have one of those lighters for your big lighters for your fireplace, make sure to put that up. Matches, put them up and away. And most importantly, if you have a gas fireplace, your gas key. Do not leave your gas key in where it turns on, because sometimes little hands see mom and dad do that and they may do it themselves. So take that gas key out, put it up on the mantle where it belongs. And that will just make sure that your family is safe, because you are intentionally starting a fire in your home, remember. And we want to remind you of that. So our guests this evening are Russ Dimmitt, and Russ is the CSIA Education Director, team member of mine, and Matt Ellis, who's the Assistant Education Director. So we'll start out with them. And, one of the first ways I'll start it out, obviously, guys, is weather changes are happening all over the nation right now. There's heat streaks going through the Midwest, through the South, thunderstorms. How are these big changes in heat from the weather's perspective affecting the chimneys in a lot of these areas?
Well, one of the things to keep in mind is the rain. We get these severe thunderstorms with high winds, and chimneys, brick chimneys, stone chimneys in particular, but also even the sided chases like you might have on your factory-built fireplace. Water is the enemy of any of those things. We often say water is the enemy of masonry. Any kind of masonry, brick in particular, stone, mortar, they have the ability to soak up a tremendous amount of water. So that water can actually migrate clear through the brickwork or the joints, the cement between the bricks, and leak into your home. So that's one issue. The other thing that can happen frequently we see is the top of the chimney. There should be something on top of that chimney. Various terms depending on what part of the country you're on. Folks might call it a splay. They might call it a wash. They might call it a crown. That serves as a roof over your chimney, and it protects your chimney from the moisture running down through. It's uncommon, or it's not common, to have the proper top on there, no matter what you call it. Those specifically should be made by code and for performance out of concrete. It's very common for those to be made of just regular mortar, just like your chimney's built with. That won't stand up to the weather. We see more problems in the wintertime, or the more the damage occurs in the wintertime. We see more water entering the home in the summertime. What happens is, as those bricks and mortar soak up water and you get into a freeze-thaw cycle, water is one of those things that expands when it freezes. So consequently, it will break apart your chimney. And we'll go into some more detail on some of those types of damage you can see. But moisture is the enemy of your chimney.
And to piggyback onto that. So one of the things Russ was talking about, making sure you have the proper cap on top. The other thing is, making sure that you get your chimney waterproofed. There are products out there to do that, and then it'll help during the winter months when we get into that freeze thaw scenario.
Yeah, and I didn't mention, but Matt called cap, which is what a lot of people call that mortar or concrete thing I was talking about.
Crown.
In the industry, we think more about a cap with screen and mesh and a lid that goes on top. There's various sizes of those. Some just cover the chimney flue itself. The flue is the area where the smoke comes out, or the flue gases if you have a furnace boiler. Some just cover that. More ideally, you have one that covers the whole top of the chimney. What that does is it protects the entire top of that chimney from water entering. You get the freeze thaw going. When we get the kind of weather we're having right now, really hot, humid weather, and rains running down your chimney, if you're burning wood, you have the products of combustion from burning wood. Typically, we'll think creosote, ash, soot, things like that. So when that water mixes with those, it makes it smell. All chimneys smell. But when you have a proper situation and you have flow up the chimney flue, those smells are taken outside. But we get this hot, humid weather, we get our air conditioners running, and you can actually reverse that flow and start bringing that smell into the house. And it's a fairly acrid, unpleasant smell. So that's one of the reasons you want a chimney cap on top of there to keep that water from running down the flue. You know, as the water runs down the flue, it also can cause damage to the inside of that chimney. Most chimneys are built, masonry chimneys anyway, are built with a ceramic flue tile, and those are 2 feet long for most of them. The really large ones might only be a foot long, but consequently, those have to be attached together somehow. And there's the codes and standards say it should be a non-water soluble refractory cement. Now that's a mouthful. But unfortunately, a lot of these chimneys were built with the same mortar that they built the chimney with, just like I talked about the cap or the splay. So when that water runs down the inside of the chimney because it's not capped, it will start to wash those out, which presents an avenue for smoke and heat to escape outside of those flue tiles and possibly get to your home.
And when we're talking about rains too, it has been known to happen that if we get some of those driving rains, you know, those rains that come in sideways, even though you've got a chimney cap on top of your flue or on top of your crown or chase, it is possible still to get water inside the firebox or the appliance.
Definitely the case, particularly on a driving sideways rain. The difficulty is if you build a chimney cap or mesh up there that will not allow water to come in when the rain's blowing horizontally, smoke can't get out either. So that's an issue. Another benefit that comes to mind this time of year is we're in the animal nesting season. We're getting towards the end of the raccoon nesting season, but we certainly have chimney swifts right now, and the squirrels might be nesting in your chimney in your fireplace. Right above where your fire, there's something called the smoke shelf, and animals will nest in that area. One thing to keep in mind is everybody loves to see the chimney swifts flying around, but any animal that's could enter your chimney. Now, typically, the ones that nest in your chimney are animals that might nest in a hollow tree, such as a raccoon or a squirrel. The chimney swifts see the inside of your chimney just as a cliff, which is what they evolved to nest on. So they nest in your chimney, and they make a tremendous racket. Those little chimney swifts, it's almost a metallic sound, and it is annoying as can be. Now, it doesn't really even sound like a bird. It's almost metal or mechanical type sound. From the homeowner standpoint and from the professional that you might call because you have birds in your chimney, most birds are federally protected. So if they are nesting in your chimney, there is nothing you can do about it until they leave. There are huge fines either for a homeowner or a chimney professional that would remove those birds, and it mounts up pretty fast. So there's another reason to cap your chimneys, to keep the animals out. Like I said, once those chimney swifts nest, they're there until those babies fledge and they've flown south.
And Cody Whitwood made a comment that each brick can hold 1 cup of water.
That's accurate. Yep.
Wow. That's a lot.
A ton.
I didn't even know.
A lot of water. Yeah.
Yeah. Before I came into the industry, you know, I looked at a brick was just, you know, it's a solid piece of masonry.
Right.
But actually, you know, it's full of little capillaries, and those little tubes and capillaries can fill up with water. And so that was something interesting that I found when I came into the industry, that I didn't realize that it would hold that much water.
Yeah, if you look at a brick under high magnification, you can see all those little channels where the water can enter.
So when we go from a winter climate, well, let's use the state of Minnesota, for example, where, it can be 95 degrees in the beginning of September, and then the next day it can be 22 below zero and snowing. What does that do to your chimney? I mean, as far as the physics of it and the science of it.
Well, things expand as they heat, contract as they cool. And we're talking about water right now. So one thing you want to keep in mind is if there's water soaked in your brick, and they will hold up to a cup of water, like Cody mentioned.
Right.
When that water freezes, it expands. And there's a process that often takes place. We call it spalling. That's our term for it. But generically, what it means is the face of those bricks is hard. When that water freezes on the inside, that face can often pop off and fall down. That exposes that brick to even more water absorption because you don't have that hard surface anymore. And there's really no fix for that. If you have spalled bricks, you basically have to rebuild to the extent to fix it. There's no fix for a spalled brick. Once they're spalled, they're done. The other thing that can happen, Bill, you talked about moderate climates, and Minnesota is far from a moderate climate. I live in Iowa, which isn't very far, and when we talk to people, they're amazed at the temperature swings. For example, today it's 95, and I think it's going to be 100 tomorrow.
Right.
We can also be 20 below or more, 30 below in January. So we have some of the largest temperature swings anywhere on Earth. So when you get into areas, and this is really a factor when you first start using your appliance in the fall. In order for a chimney to work properly, you have to have temperature differential between the inside of the chimney or the flue and the outside. And the greater that temperature difference, the more draft or pull you have to get that product of combustion, smoke or whatever, up and out of the house. So on those fall days when you just need to take the chill off, that can be the most difficult time to start a fire, particularly if it's a rainy, dreary day. The air is heavy, for lack of a better term. So you want to get that temperature differential, and it's not a large degree of temperature differential we're talking about. The difference between 40 degrees outside and 20 degrees outside is amazing. I won't bore you with all the details, but I was involved in a situation once with a fireplace. It was a manufactured fireplace, and it wouldn't work. In 50-degree weather, that fireplace would absolutely not work. And after a lot of phone calls to the manufacturer, they finally said, well, that fireplace won't work unless it's 32 degrees. I thought they were wrong. We ended up getting their national technical advisor to our office to look at it. The day he arrived, it was 18 degrees.
Right.
Fireplace worked amazing. So the difference between 50 and 18, what's that? 32 degrees, made all the difference in the world whether that fireplace would function properly or not.
And that's interesting because we have a lot of members, certified members, and a lot of people in the southern states where to them 40 is cold.
Exactly.
So, I mean, if they have one of those fireplaces, are they going to have problems when it goes down to 40 and they're chilled?
They may have.
Yeah, it's possible.
That's very possible.
Because here in Iowa, like Russ was saying, if it's 50 degrees out, you're bound to see some guy wearing shorts and flip-flops. Where down in the south, maybe they're not.
And Matt may very well be that guy. I'm just going to go on record and say flip-flops when it was pretty cold outside.
Right. So that's a common issue that we do here is that, hey, my customer had tried having a fire last night and it smoked up their house, and maybe there's something wrong with the appliance. Well, then when you go into the investigation portion of it, the inspection portion of it, you start looking at things and then you come to realize, well, it was only 50 degrees or 55 last night. You're not going to establish a good draft.
Okay.
It could be as simple as that.
Yeah. Another thing I want to point out, and this is not related to weather so much as operation of the appliance. When you get into those warmer temperatures and you just need to take the chill off, it's important that you don't overload your appliance, whether it be a fireplace or wood stove. What happens is you want to take the chill off, you fill your appliance up, and after a while you get a good hot fire and you overheat the room. So you end up opening a window, or even worse is you shut down the air control on the appliance to slow down the burn. Consequently, you make a lot of creosote and things in the flue. Really, in that situation, you should use a lot less wood. And the honest truth is, it doesn't matter what kind of wood you have as long as it's dry enough, which we say 15 to 25%. And you'll hear in some areas of the country where hardwood is the only thing available, never burn pine. That's not true. Pine is just fine. And actually, in those more moderate days, pine is perfect. It's even better because it lights easily, it burns fast, doesn't put off as much heat per volume as hardwood. Wood, regardless of the species, has about the same number of BTUs per pound, but you can put softwood in there, less BTUs, it will burn faster, you don't overheat the room. So it's good to have a mix of woods available to you so you can, for lack of a better term, custom build a fire.
What do you guys think? You know, when it's hot out like this and it's in the 90s, you know, John Caesar was saying last week about closing your damper in the winter after things have cooled down. Should you keep that damper cold? I mean, does air conditioning get sucked out of your chimney too?
It can, yeah.
Okay.
Good.
Yeah, you do want to have the damper closed in warm conditions, because basically if you don't have that damper closed, you basically have an open hole to the outside.
Right. And as Russ was talking about earlier, you know, if you got a masonry fireplace, you really want to keep that damper closed, you know, just because of possible intrusion of animals.
Right.
So.
Yeah, it's a epic thing when a squirrel comes down through the chimney and escapes that from your fireplace in the living room, because you get little black sooty footprints everywhere. He just goes berserk and he's bouncing off the walls, climbing the curtains. It's amazing the destruction one of those little things can cause in hardly any time at all. So you want to keep the critters out. And that's one of the things we teach at our academy for chimney sweeps is before you open that damper, be very careful that there are no animals in there. There's some great stories, only because they didn't happen to me, that are absolutely hilarious when somebody didn't adhere to that. They have a raccoon or squirrel drop in their lap. So it's pretty interesting.
You know, one of the questions I often get, just, you know, and I'm a consumer really like everybody else until I came to this position. Is there any way to summarize, and I don't mean it, I mean in the summer, your chimney, like should you stick insulation up it?
There are a few different products. I mean, keeping your damper closed is one that's going to help keep the smell out. There are some products that you can, like, lack of a better term, like inflate to help with some of the odors and things like that.
Chimney balloon. They call them a chimney balloon. Yep.
Yep. To stop the air smells from coming into the house. But yeah, I mean, you want to have it closed up during the summer.
Yeah, one of the key things to minimize the smells is have your chimney swept. Take out a lot of that smelly material. Now, like I said, all chimneys smell. There are a few products out there that there's a possibility it will eliminate enough creosote to eliminate the smell, but there's no guarantee. There's some products out there that some folks can use to basically pull the creosote out, because what happens is the creosote soaks into anything porous. So despite sweeping the chimney, you're still going to have some odor in there.
Okay.
The one thing I want to mention is we talked about rain coming down the flue, washing out the mortar joints and things like that. Another common thing we'll see is in inspecting chimneys, we'll see that the flue tiles are broken for some reason. Might be a sudden heat event, something like that, age, abuse, whatever the case may be. Any holes in that chimney or that flue actually will inhibit the appliance from operating properly. The smoke draft, we all know the term draft, but what draft actually is it's a negative pressure in the chimney, a suction, because the air is hotter than the surrounding air. It will, in that column, it will rise and escape. We've all had the experience of trying to drink through a straw.
Right.
It's got a hole in it. It becomes much more difficult. If your chimney flue tiles are compromised in some way, because it's a suction that makes those products of combustion leave, it has a more difficult time operating properly. It should be a continuous, solid pathway.
You know, Russ, maybe I don't understand this part, but what would make a chimney smell? Is it from the water or animals or what? Why would it smell?
From the byproducts of the wood burning, essentially.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's the creosote. Yeah, I mean, certainly if you get animals in there, especially if they don't make it out, you're gonna have a different type of smell, which has been known to happen.
Those are also amusing stories that I won't tell right now because it's about dinner time.
All right.
Yeah.
But yeah. So, just as a side note, creosote is a carcinogen.
Oh, okay.
So you don't want to breathe it in if you can avoid it. Now, it's not one of those things that's going to instantly get you, but the length of exposure and the amount of exposure is really the key on that. So anything you can do to avoid that. We spend a lot of time in our academies and our classes and our manuals teaching folks to stay as clean as possible. It's a fact that the first illness that was named after a profession was chimney sweeps disease. And it was a cancer that developed in they called them climbing boys.
Okay.
Back in England and some of those countries, they would actually clean the chimneys 1600s, 1700s. And at that time it was mandatory by law in those countries because you had all this wooden construction. These houses were very close together. If one house caught on fire, it would often wipe out huge sections of the city. We think about the big Chicago fire and Mrs. O'Leary's cow, but they had some really bad fires in London, so it was mandatory you have your chimney swept. So these chimney masters, or whatever you might want to call them, would rent, sometimes purchase 7, 8, 10-year-old boys from their parents, and they would actually climb the chimney and brush it out by hand. And because they didn't have a lot of cleanliness going on in those days, and the creosote stayed on them, it did cause a lot of cancers at that time. Matt, what do you think about, you talked about waterproofing the chimney. You want to address the different types of waterproofing, basically the breathable waterproofings versus some of the stuff that's available to homeowners like Thompson's, for example, or a sealer?
Yeah, right. I mean, there are products out there, especially used by professionals. They're used to coat the channels in the masonry or brickwork chimneys that are out there. Some of the products that are available for the do-it-yourselfers or big box stores, it actually ends up sealing the chimneys. We want the chimneys to breathe so that way they can dry out properly. So by using these other products from the big box stores and such, we're closing them. So as Russ was saying earlier, once you get moisture inside the bricks and you've sealed it off, there's nowhere for that moisture to go. So as soon as it starts to freeze, those little channels in there start to crack and break. And then after so many times of that freeze thaw, then you get the spalling, which Russ was talking about earlier, and the face of the bricks fall off.
Yeah. And you might wonder, well, you've sealed the brick, where does that moisture come from? Well, it could very well be coming from the splay wash crown up top, might be cracked or damaged. And the other place it comes from, we're primarily talking about fireplaces and wood stoves and creosote today. But one thing to keep in mind is you need to pay attention to your heating system chimney, whether it be oil, gas, whatever the case may be. when you burning is actually a chemical process. And as part of that chemical process, and we'll teach different folks what complete combustion is. When you have combustion, you produce water vapor. For example, a gas appliance, for every 100,000 BTUs you burn, you produce a gallon of water. So if that chimney is cold or whatever the case may be, and that's a whole nother discussion we can have about properly sizing the flue, a lot of these heating systems are put in old masonry chimneys that are much bigger than they need to be. So if they don't put a stainless steel liner or something like that in there to contain the products of combustion, because of the chimney is much larger than it needs to be, those flue gases will expand and cool, and they will actually condense inside the flue, inside the chimney. So that water then comes from the inside out. So if you have that chimney sealed on the outside, that water can't escape. So you get, as Matt said, you'll get that spalling. The other things you might get is staining of the chimney. As that water migrates through the brick and mortar, it dissolves the salts that are in there, and that deposits on the outside of the chimney, and you get this yellow, white, gray, greenish stain. It depends on what area of the country and the color of your bricks. So that's something else to be aware of, is water coming from the inside.
Mm-hmm.
You know, one of the things I was looking online, and again, you know, being at CSIA for only going on 4 months now, is that, you know, they have these sweep kits that you can buy that you can use your own screw, you know, rotary screwdriver to be turning yourself into a chimney sweep, you know, drilling up there. But what I've learned, you know, I was just a consumer before coming here, is that there's that shelf up there above your damper. And I think somebody could really do some major damage if you don't know what you're doing.
Possibly.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things that we do at the school, the week-long school, you know, as we go over the process of doing it. And, you know, it gets so much more in depth than just sweeping a chimney.
Right.
Because typically you're going to find some sort of other issue that could be going on inside the fireplace, the smoke chamber, or the chimney itself. So, you know, that's why we'd always recommend a certified chimney sweep.
Correct.
Yeah. The sweeping is part of the process, but I think more importantly is the inspection that the chimney professional, the certified chimney sweep, performs. There are actually mandates put out there by the National Fire Protection Association on the inspections. And there are actually a minimum of 33 things they inspect, and it can be up to 66. And they will actually list in the National Fire Protection Association standard, you have to check these 33 or these additional 33, depending on how in depth your inspection is. But every one of those places where it said these 33 things and said, this list is not all inclusive.
Okay.
So you really need to know what you're looking at. We have built a couple different chimneys there at our training center with all the defects we can imagine, which is a tremendous amount of fun. We sat around tables and just had a blast. For example, our masonry chimney has over 100 defects in it. Everything we could ever think of that we have seen in the field. We just had a class earlier this week that we sent these guys, and it was a very experienced group. Some of these guys have been in business 8, 10, 15 years, and they had an absolute blast looking at these chimneys and coming back to us with a list of the defects they found.
Right.
Well, and if you recall, Russ, I mean, when I first came to CSIA and saw that chimney, I thought, oh, this is broken. We need to get it fixed. Well, no, it's intentional. So they find those kind of things. And, you know, that's how chimney sweeps are so professional, to help you as a consumer at your home, because they have been through this at our technology center.
Yes. And it's, you know, most chimney companies will use a video scanning system to go inside your chimney, regardless of your level of professionalism. Because of the nature of that long, tall cylinder, you have to run a camera. You can't see, I don't care, the best light on earth, from the top or the bottom, what that chimney, what defects might or might not exist.
And as a consumer, um, it's okay to ask them to see these kind of things, right? Or to follow.
Absolutely.
I mean, I wouldn't want to hawk somebody over the shoulder, but at least understand what they're talking about, because I think that makes me a better consumer.
Yeah, and they should give you a report at the conclusion of their inspection.
A lot of them run cameras that you'll be able to see live, right on site, and the ones that I've talked to, it doesn't bother them to have the homeowner, hey, this is what's going on inside your chimney, and showing them, okay, this is a defect, and we have to take care of this. This is what we're looking at. So it actually does help educate the homeowner. I mean, essentially, this is the biggest investment that you make in your life is your home, right?
Yeah.
And so why would you want to spare any cost or the knowledge and try to do it yourself? Hire somebody that's going to come out and do a great inspection for you and let you know everything that's going on inside there.
And I would suggest that if they're running the video system, wait till you're invited to look at it. You'll notice as the professionals come into your home, they'll put down drop cloths to protect your home and your furniture. That's their work area. Stay off of that until they're invited. Until you're invited. They're putting that drop cloth down for a reason. They want to leave your home as cleaner than it was when they arrived. Those drop cloths are to catch any debris. If you happen to walk on the drop cloth, you could track that all over your house.
Right.
So.
And keep your pets away from that too.
Your pets, your kids, things like that. It's nice to lock your pets up. Most guys in the trade love your pets and they'd love to rub their ears. So, wait until the appropriate time for that.
Right.
Because you never know. To your pet, that's an intruder in the home.
That's correct.
Yeah. We had a class last week and they got to telling some dog bite stories. So lock your pet up.
Yeah. Yeah. Make sure that your kids stay at a safe distance away. That's important also.
Yeah. And typically the vacuums these guys use are very powerful, move a lot of air. So consequently, it's pretty loud. The majority of them will wear mirror protection. So you may want to be in a separate room while they're doing the actual sweeping and running the vacuum, because it is hazardous to your hearing over time. There's a joke that the old timers will always pull on me when I'm talking during the safety portions of classes. I'll talk about hearing protection, and some of those jokers will always go, "What? I can't hear you." The joke is they've lost their hearing.
And I think in wrapping up tonight, one of the things we need to remind people of too is, when you get a home inspection, you go to buy a new home and you get a home inspection. I can say this because I'm a realtor and a broker, but not everybody has their chimney in that home inspected. I mean, you have everything else inspected, but usually not that. Somebody will say, well, that looks good. Or and unless there's something really obvious, I think it's really a good thing. If you're going to make that major investment, as you said, Matt, take the extra few dollars and have that chimney inspected by a certified chimney sweeper.
Yeah, CSI has done a lot of work over the years with home inspectors. I know I've spoken to the National Convention a few times. Some other folks have. We spoke to a lot of regional home inspector groups. The home inspectors don't inspect a chimney. Most of them will recommend you get a professional, a CSI certified sweeper to do it. Just coincidentally, our week-long academy last week, we had 3 home inspectors in the school. They took the whole week-long school. It's not unusual to see 1 or 2, but we had 3 last week, and they wanted to learn how to do it. It's important to them to do a good job for their homeowners. And if you neglect that, and I think we might be coming out of this now, but we had a period of time there where people were buying homes just saying, hey, I don't want an inspection, I'll take it.
Right.
Yeah, the expense of some of the chimney repairs can be substantial. It's not $1,000 or $2,000 repair in some cases. It can be, but it can also be $15,000, $20,000, $30,000 or more. So you want to get it inspected so you know what you're getting into.
Yeah, it'd be good to know before you made that purchase. You know, the cost of the repairs or the extent of the repairs that you're going to be looking at.
Right.
Especially if you're buying a 1920s house, or it's not new construction. It's something that's been around for 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
You just don't know what these changes were made during the
period. Yeah. You don't. And the codes and standards have evolved over the years. And as an industry, we teach, don't worry about the codes and standards. Just be aware of them, follow them. But the real thing for you as a homeowner is how that is going to affect the performance of your appliance.
Right.
It's the codes have evolved for a reason. They're safety codes. So you need to understand, yes, this particular thing is not correct, and here's how it's going to affect me negatively because it's not correct.
Right. And, most homeowners leave the manuals for your appliances and stuff like that behind, but not for your chimney.
Right.
Right.
I mean, you're on your own with that. So I think it's smart for the consumer to bring in, especially if you buy a home and you have a big chimney, like mine goes all the way up. I mean, it's like cathedral ceiling. To have a chimney, CSIA chimney specialist, chimney sweep come in and take a look at this, because I don't know what they were doing previously. There's no record of it.
Right.
Yeah, that's not something that is going to be left behind, because a lot of times, you're starting over.
Right.
When you move into a home, you need to start from day one. Don't assume, just because, you got a fireplace that everything's in working order and great. Check that out first.
Yeah. One key for a homeowner, if you're looking at buying a home and you walk in and you see smoke stains on that fireplace face, that's a key to you. That chimney is not working properly. A proper operating fireplace, you should never be able to smell smoke. And that's something that's kind of I talk to homeowners, I say, oh, I love the smell of smoke when I'm burning my fireplace. You shouldn't be smelling that. A properly operating chimney takes every bit of that out, every bit of the smoke. So smoke stains on the front of the fireplace, things like that, are clues there might be something seriously wrong.
Yep.
Well, is there anything else you guys would like to add to tell our consumers so they have a better idea? I mean, if you're looking for a chimney sweep, go to CSIA.org on our consumer page, put in your zip code, and a bunch of them will come up for you. But is there anything else you guys would like to add to the conversation to just give the consumer a heads up with the changing in weather that's been going on lately?
I guess I would say is, the biggest thing right now is, we're getting close to that time of year and guys are going to really start ramping up. So if you need to get your chimney looked at, your fireplace looked at, don't wait until October 1st when you get that first cold night to call them, because you're going to call them and they're going to say you're out 6, 8, 10, or 12 weeks. And, so if you're thinking about doing it, don't wait, do it now.
Yeah, this is the ideal time to get your chimney swept, get it inspected, because now we've got time to make any necessary repairs. And the chimney sweeps, while they're still really busy this time of year, can fit you in the schedule, because what's going to happen is if you call the week before Thanksgiving,
right?
Say, hey, I want to have a fire Thanksgiving. Could you come out and look at my fireplace? They probably aren't going to laugh, but they will be in the back of their mind. Matt's absolutely correct. The time to get your chimney serviced is ideally right after you quit burning in the spring.
Yep.
Okay.
Creosote residue from oil burning appliances like a boiler or water heater or a furnace, a gas burning furnace. That residue that's left in the chimney is acidic. So what will happen is it will start to break your chimney down over time. So the sooner you get that out after you're done burning, the better.
Well, that's great advice. And we want to thank you guys. I get to work with you every day, so I get to obtain and listen to your knowledge. But the consumer, it's through these kind of things like the fireside chat that they get to learn all the knowledge you have. during a time like this. And I appreciate your time this evening in being a part of the Fireside Chat and what we are doing in providing this great information for the consumer, because that's who we serve every day.
Yeah, I agree. I always enjoy this, talking directly to the consumers. The chimney guys, I talk to them every day, but it's fun to be able to talk to the consumers because that's part of CSI's mission. We educate professionals and train them, but also we educate homeowners. Our goal is that everybody has a safe, warm home. It's like we've temporarily lost Bill here.
Yeah.
Matt, have we missed anything related to weather that you can think of?
I think we pretty well covered it all. I mean, the only other thing that I think you could possibly see, during the winter months, if you're getting snow and ice up on top, is, if you've got that damper closed, you got the warm air that's rising up your flue. So what's going to happen is that warm air is going to hit the bottom of that cap or that damper lid, and it's going to condensate. So it isn't uncommon that you could see some, drippage into your fireplace, and that's probably where it's coming from.
There very well could be. Another point to expand on that is if you live in a very cold area of the country, it doesn't hurt to take a look at the top of your chimney occasionally, because as I said, you produce a gallon of water for every 100,000 BTUs of gas you burn. It's possible in extremely cold climates for extended periods of time that you may start getting some icing up there that blocks the flow of flue gases from leaving. So we always suggest you have a carbon monoxide alarm in your home, regardless of what fuel you're burning. Carbon monoxide is a hazard of incomplete combustion, no matter what you're burning.
Right.
That's good advice.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys.
You're
And
welcome.
thank you everyone for joining us this evening for our Fireside Chat. Tommy will be back in 2 weeks. And it's my honor to have filled in for him this week and being a part of it. And Russ and Matt, thank you as always. They're both new grandfathers, so they've got family to go and enjoy.
All right. Thanks, Bill.
Thanks,
Thank
Bill.
you. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.